And how's it going, everybody? My name is Antonio, and I'm on the barbecue today on December 13 with Morgan Leckstrom, CEO of Blackwolf Copper and Gold, a copper and gold exploration company with three projects in Golden Triangle, one in British Columbia and two in Alaska. Who's not here with us today, though, is your financial advisor. This conversation is not going to include any recommendations to buy nor sell anything. Instead, it will be just a talk. It's going to be a casual, general, and an impersonal talk between two people on the internet. And if you haven't been burned yet, or if your mom didn't tell you, you're not supposed to blindly trust strangers on the internet. Also, please do not use this conversation as independent research because it is going to include forward-looking statements about uncertain events that may or may not happen in the future, but also because the exploration space is just one of the toughest places to profitably deploy capital in. There is a lot of risk. There are a lot of risks, multiples, which means that it is your responsibility to do more research, take your own decision in the end. So head over to setterplus.ca and read the company's official filings, as well as please consult a professional investment advisor before taking your own decision in the end. That all said, Blackwolf is listed on a TSXV under the ticker symbol BWCG, where an average of about, let's call it 200,000 shares trade each day, with a 52-week high of about 50 cents and a 52-week low of 17.5 cents, actually, where we're close at today. With a market cap of about 22 million Canadian dollars at the time of recording of this video, and about 123 million shares outstanding. Again, today, this is a 17.5 cent stock. There are also about 42 million warrants, resulting in, give or take, 165 million fully diluted shares. About 13% of the company is owned by management and directors. 8.5% is in the hands of a famous investor, goes by the name Frank Giustra, and thus for about 78.5%, or that would make it about 96 million shares, are in the hands of retail and institutional investors. As at the end of July this year, the company had about $6 million in cash and some account receivables, as well as some prepaid expenses for a total amount in current assets of a little over $6.5 million. That was against current liabilities of about $1.7 million, constituting of mostly account payables, and there's also $1.7 million provision for rehabilitation on the non-current liability side of the balance sheet. But it is worth noting that the company did recently close a private placement with the lead order, by the way, from that Frank Giustra told you about. That was to the tune of $3.2 million, raised at 20 cents per share and a full 2-year warrant, and 35 cents per share per warrant, I guess. And then they've also been actively drilling, so the financials might look a bit differently right now, but that's something I hope to hear from Morgan about later on in the conversation. As I said at the beginning, Blackwolf has 3 properties that are all in the Golden Triangle, all not too far off from each other, but technically in 2 different countries, 2 in Alaska and then 1 in British Columbia, which is in Canada, of course. The one in BC is close to a town called Stewart, sort of a famous mining town or exploration town, if you will, in BC. The project itself, it's called the Harry project, is the newest project that the company has, but it's called, by the way, after the famous prospector from the 1980s. People might have heard about Harry Swan. One of the zones the company made a discovery on is also called the Swan Zone. And a drill program was completed here in October. That's where that new discovery was announced at the end of October, coming from, again, the Swan Zone on the property, showing over 300 grams of gold per ton in some parts of hole 17. It was over 1 meter, and assay results are now pending on the rest of that hole. Those 2 intercepts of close to, one of them was like 220 something, and then the other one was 300 grams a ton. So high grade intercepts over just about a meter, and that was not the complete hole. So assays are now pending on the rest of that hole, as well as the remaining 6 holes from that initial program. Now, the Harry project consists of 5 properties close to each other, but not in a continuous package. In total, they would come up to almost 8,000 hectares, all of which fall within that Golden Triangle on the BC side of things, as I said. Blackwolf currently holds an option to acquire an 80% interest in that project. The option expires in the fall of 2026, by which point they will have to have made a $1.5 million cash payment, issued $2.6 million worth of shares, and incurred expenditures of $9 million in total, although part of those has already been fulfilled at around $2.5 million, give or take, which again will result in an 80% ownership of the Harry project with a remaining 2% NSR on it. Now that's Canada. Over in Alaska, the company owns, let's start off with the Niblack or the Niblack project, 100% interest in that one. It is named after the historic Niblack mine, which is on an island in southern Alaska, which is obviously where this project is too. And there's a few polymetallics, so that'd be your copper and gold, sure, but also zinc and silver, VMS type deposits on this property with a very old history to them, as well as a 120,000 meters of drilling, which is completed in 424 holes, resulting in a resource estimate published earlier this year that included over 5.4 million tons in the indicated category. That'd be copper, gold, and zinc, so 0.92% copper, almost 2 grams of 2 grams per ton of gold, some zinc and some silver in there. And there's also 159,000 tons in the inferred category, grading give or take the same grades. And that was on one of the known mineralized zones, and then on another one of the 6 in total mineralized zones, there was 460,000 tons in the indicated category, higher grades of copper, 1.16%, and there's also 55,000 tons in the inferred category, as well as, again, there's always some zinc in there as well. And that was defined in another one of the known mineralized zones in the Niblack project. And so the company believes that those are just 2 of the 6 mineralized zones that are capable of such resources, as well as they hope that there's more potential exploration upside here, given that all 6 of the known mineralized zones are hosted within felsic volcanic rocks that extend over 2 kilometers beyond what has previously been tested, this is just basically me trying to sound smart while I say that there's just more room for drilling. Now, a bit more to the north, but still in southern Alaska, Blackwolf owns the Cantoo property, which is one of 5 properties on the Hyde project. Company owns 100% interest in that one. It is a maiden drill program on this property this summer, and it showed porphyry-style mineralization with assays has not yet been released. Also a point of discussion here today, but a drill program has been completed. Again, 4 more projects on this property. But I feel like I've been talking long enough already, and I scared away probably enough people. So I'll be shutting up now, welcoming the CEO. Morgan, thank you so much for investing your time with me, sir.
Well, thanks for having me. And I don't think I could have done a better overview myself. Great work.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. But what am I getting anything wrong? What am I missing in the overview? Anything you want to add?
No, you really nailed it on the Harry project and the history and the high grade hit. There wasn't actually another hit there of 277 grams in the same hole. So that hole so far is a 589 gram meter hole, which is pretty impressive by industry standards. And as far as Niblack and Cantoo on the Alaska side go, you hit it right on. Niblack is this highly expandable VMS deposit that was been overlooked for a long time. It was misunderstood. When Rob McLeod and our geological team came in, we put together a new interpretation of it, and that led us to believe that there is more extents to it. So we ended up drilling at the Niblack mine, the old historic. When you say I'm air quoting historic, it was an old 20s. They'd done a little bit of work. So where we are, we started to show that there's a lot of high grade left. We had the 7.5 meters of 5% copper with 5 grams gold. Those are not small hits. Those are pretty strong nowadays. So there's a lot of potential, not only there, Harry, Cantoo. We talked, you mentioned the results that are still to come. We're starting to finally get stuff trickling in from the lab, so we should be talking to the market as soon as I can about this and about what our bigger plans are as a company. I mean, a huge part of our strategy is to utilize people like Frank, who is a legend, who has a ton of horsepower behind him, and Rob and Andy Bowering, who's on the board. This type of company is set up to be something much larger, and we're setting it up to be something much larger. So I always encourage people to stay tuned. The market's going to do what the market's going to do for a little bit, but what I can promise and what we are promising as a company is we are going to be driving this forward, and we're going to be utilizing the horsepower that is behind it.
Lots to touch upon there, of course. I do want to start with the Harry project. And obviously I do want to talk about what you mentioned, that you hope to be a larger company. So later on in the conversation, maybe we can talk about that MOU that you signed for that potential hub and spoke model there. But why did you choose to release partial drill holes here? And maybe also talk to me about the chronology of things, because you got the Harry property after you had stopped drilling, I believe, on Cantoo, and so chronologically you would have expected to have Cantoo results first, but then you released Harry and it was only a partial hole. So talk to me about the strategy behind announcing grades that way.
Absolutely. I mean, when we announced that we were obtaining Optimum Ventures, that was the same day that I came on as CEO as Blackwolf. So we had to obviously put together plans for Harry. We'd done some work as a part of our agreement. We were allowed to go out there and do some pre-work. So what we were seeing there is why we wanted to go drill it. To touch on the one point quick, not quick, but to touch on the one point, we used a different lab. So different labs, different time zones, different time horizons. But when we saw that visible gold at Harry, we were drilling a new zone, we knew we had to rush that. So that's why we only put out partial holes. That's the only results we had at the time.
Hmm.
So it gets look, the chronology of Harry in itself is a very long-standing project that has been completely covered by a glacier. Like it was glaciated right up to the Grand Duke Road. And as this glacier receded, you started seeing these outcrops. And that's when Optimum Ventures went out there. They hit some very fantastic grades, but what of silver equivalent. But what people maybe didn't pay attention to, and we're gonna start showing this a little more in the future, is that they had sampled the whole, like the not the whole length, but some parts of the length of the project right down to the southern extent. And when they did that, they had some fantastic gold grades, like multi-hundred gram per ton hits on the samples. So, our goal this year was start drilling, show we have high grade, which we did. Now, with sampling, show where we're going to start drilling next year. Like we're in a position on the backside of a producing mine and in an area, I like to say the missing puzzle piece, but I think we're just the unknown puzzle piece because it was covered for so long. We're now only getting out there. This is a unique opportunity in a district that is filled with high grade mines that Ascot's putting back into production. Scotty's hitting high grade gold hits above us. We are literally sandwiched between them. And then again, great spot to be.
Hmm. Again, lots to talk about there, but moving forward, how do you think you're going to be announcing results? Do you think you're going to be doing more partial holes, or are you going to be going just hole by hole?
No, I think what we're going to do is we're going to try to put the whole picture together for people. That's I think one of the biggest miscommunications that could be from us and others too is when you put something partial together, it's like, okay, but what is this, right? I had a great chat with Gwen Preston, one of the very famous newsletter writers, and she phoned me and she goes like, Morgan, what is this? I'm like, okay. I spoke with Rob and our team. Was like, we need to show what the size potential this is. So we're gonna put a comprehensive news release out. We're going to show our sampling. We're going to show our drill results as we get them and finally put them together.
Hmm.
Then we can explain to people like, look, Harry was an acquisition that we did because Rob's knowledge of that area is some of the best in the world. And he said there's something there, and we proved that we've hit it already. Now we have to start building ounces and start showing that strike, and that's what we're going to do.
Right. Does that mean you're going to release the other six holes all at once? Because you said as they come in, or how do you look at that?
That's the plan. Again, I want to build the bigger picture, right? So
Right.
if I just start releasing individual holes, it's again, I'm gonna get the same question from people. What does this mean? I'd rather have the whole picture put together so that it's easy to explain, it's bite size, and boom, here's what we're looking at.
Right. Okay. Any timeline that you can give me on that?
I can't. We're still putting it together and we're still waiting for some assays back.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. What is and I guess it makes sense to me when you explain it that way as to what you want to do, and that well, it seems like you know what you're seeing and it's confirming your thesis, which is obviously encouraging. But I'm sort of at a stage in my career, if you can call it that, where I haven't been able to beat the market myself. It's rather been the other way around, and so I tend to trust the market more than I trust my own instincts. But if I employ that logic while looking at those assay results from the Harry discovery, your stock had its highest volume day ever, and it fell nearly 20% on that day. What do you think the market didn't like about the discovery at Harry?
So, I've really struggled with that one a lot. And I struggle with it for two reasons. One, A, I didn't understand why the stock went down so fast. It was like, this is not making any sense. But two, after the release, the stock actually went ripping up. It was 1 million shares. It was up. Our market makers phoned. They're like, oh my God, it's going to go. It's like, it's clear up to 40. And then someone saw liquidity and put it back down.
Mm,
And you're right. I mean, again, I had this great chat with Gwen as well about this, and perception is everything, right? Even if the results were the best in the world and the market pounded it down, perception is just not good. These are great results. These are how the Bruce Jacks and the premiers were found. They find these, they chase them, they build ounces, they find the big blowout zones. It's actually a roadmap.
mm,
Now, what happened that day? There was some investors that looked like they needed to liquidate, and I can't tell you who, and I can't tell you why, because I definitely don't know. But there is some evidence out there that leads towards some funds that were liquidating positions in a bunch of other things as well. So, as far as I look at it, they're great results. We are ecstatic. We're ecstatic to even hit that. To hit that on an exploration hole that, using Rob's knowledge really proves the point that he knows the area.
mm.
Now, when I look at where the stock price is at, I look at the general market, I look at the macro situation, I look at sentiment. I'm pretty sure I could have pulled a smacker hole out of it and it still would have did what it did. People look for excuses to use to get liquidity. We're a liquid stock. I mean,
Mm.
yesterday we traded 500,000. The day before we traded 750,000. There is consolidation happening in this space, and I haven't been in it for super long, but I've been in it long enough to know that there are times like this when consolidation is happening. That's a setup period. Something is being set up for much bigger moves.
Mm.
That's how I look at it.
Let's
Positive.
let's hope you're right on a macro there. And on the intercepts, sure, they're high grade. I mean, nobody can deny that. But it's also maybe worth noting that those headline intercepts that you reported were about a meter wide, right? And it makes sense. I mean, in the general scheme of things, but it's also maybe worth talking about. Um, because it might seem like there's, mineralization is clustered in certain spots, right? Because it had two hits of about a meter, again, high grade in the 300 range. What you mentioned, Bruce Jack? What's driving this thing that you have right now geologically? And can you already can you already compare it to Bruce Jack, or is it maybe too early to do that, or do you know enough that you can?
I will defer the geological conversation because I'm not a geologist. We can always get Rob on, but the explanation that Rob gives me, and again, knowledge of that area, and Bruce Jack was a McLeod thing, and they started out similar. They started out finding sniffs of high grade like this, but what you need to recognize, what people should recognize is, and we did speak about it in our press release, and we'll speak about it more, is that around that 277 gram hit, there's a massive gold halo. And we'll be speaking to the market more about that, as we didn't have the full results from it, and those are coming in. So we're looking at how to explain that gold halo. And this is what they find at Bruce Jack and Premier. They find a high grade small zone with a big halo of gold around it, and they mine the whole thing. So they go out 10, 20 meter clusters and they mine them, and they dilute it down to, I don't know, 10, 8 grams. I think the average grade at Premier is like 8.9, Bruce Jack's 8 point something. So again, ultra high grade, but diluted down so you can bulk mine it. It's really tough to trace just small veins, which, people like to say that, well, it's only a meter. Well, only a meter of 300 or 400 grams or 250 grams is better than, in my mind, 5 meters of 5 grams. You can dilute. It gives you a lot of forgiveness. So that in that sense is an analogous to what Bruce Jack is and Premier.
Right.
That's how they found them.
It is the way that you're looking at this right now, and I understand you cannot tell me too much here, but are you working with the thesis that there are multiple of this sorts of veins between the surface and this intercept, or would you expect they pick up at depth?
It looks like there's shoots. We're in one shoot. And I think a lot of the sampling that Optimum did before had proved that there's potentially other shoots in other areas. The sampling that we did this year, and we'll talk to the market about, hopefully proves the rest of that thesis. Again, I don't have the results back from that sampling. And when we do, we'll be putting that big picture together. But when you hit a high grade hit on the top north side of the property, and then there's high grade samples from the south side of the property, it's pretty easy to say, well, there's got to be something in between there
Mm,
geologically. And then you look at how all the resources in the area from Ascot trend onto our property, and they were just never looked at because of the glacier. So now Now, as their trend goes, it makes a lot of sense. Like we're right in the middle of the trend.
Right. Right. As far as I understand it, by the way, the Bruce Jack mine is the deposit of the Bruce Jack mine is based on specifically was formed on a Cretaceous fault and thrust belt, which is that's basically driving the main mineralization there, which is northwest trending, if I'm not mistaken, and
Yep.
therefore it's bringing mineralization close to surface in that sort of a ladder, as you like calling it, type of mineralization where there's pockets of high grade, and then there's space in between, and then there's pockets of high grade, and then space in between again, and so on and so forth. And I know it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. I really don't. Which is why I couldn't tell whether that's what you're seeing here based on the core that you've published. So but that's what it comes down to. I mean, that's what you're working with, right? That latter type of basically same thesis as the Bruce Jack, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And we did say that in our press release. We said it looks like a ladder style stacked vein system. Bruce Jack's fed by the KSM porphyry. So we're looking at the porphyries in and around our area. I mean, you look at Premier, they start hitting Premier porphyry, they know they're in the high grade zone. We're
Mm,
hitting the high grade zone already. So now, or what we think already is high grade, it has a potential to be much higher grade. Bruce Jack did that. They hit zones like what we're doing, and so did Premier. A couple 100 grams, 300 grams, and then boom, they hit a 10,000 or they hit a 5,000. Like there is huge potential there. It's all about finding that and now vectoring in on it and understanding the geology. And again, I go back to our team understanding that area very well and making this discovery. So yeah, the 4 kilometers of land package on the side of a mine that trends onto our property is not a bad spot to be.
mm, sure. It's in that news release, by the way, that you're bringing up. You also said that you said something along the lines that Harry is the first page in Blackwolf's book of discoveries, something along those lines. I like that reference, so I remembered it. Um, but what would be next for Harry? Let's say that this is the forward-looking statements that I talked about at the beginning. But let's say you announce the full picture, you like what you're seeing, and you want to follow it up. How are you following it up?
So we're going to follow it up in 2 ways. One way will be more mapping and sampling on surface. And then the second way, we are planning a drill program that we'll talk to the market about shortly. But we're going to follow up with a fair size drill program there. We're fully funded for it already. We actually came in significantly under budget on our drill program. And, my background's building projects and putting mines together and other types of projects. So I always like to emphasize when you come under budget, but we doubled our drill program and came in $250,000 under budget. That's for that area is fairly impressive.
Mm.
Usually you run over budget and don't get as many meters. So when we're planning our next drill program, we know that area very well now. We want to start drilling the extents. We want to show that 4 kilometers connects. That's, a little bit of a forward looking, but that's our plan. We'll go back in there in May, June, and we'll hit it hard.
Mm. How much money did you pay per meter of drilling, by the way, for this program?
It was about 470 Canadian all in.
Oh,
And
okay.
for a helicopter drilling, that's very inexpensive.
Yeah, good point. Where are you asking that, by the way?
That assays come down to Vancouver.
Okay, good. That makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is there could you get more specific on how much money you think you're gonna spend next year then? I mean, even if it is next year.
Yeah. So I mean, we're looking at potentially the program between 5 and 8,000 meters, based on what we've put in for all our costs. Having 2.5 million go into that is not a difficult thing to do. We already have that cash in the bank. We're ready to go there, and it's all reserved. So now it's just the planning the drill holes, and that's where the rest of the results and the sampling results are going to play a huge impact.
So you don't necessarily know what part of the property you're gonna go to drill it.
We know that we're going to continue to drill on the zone we found, and then we're going to look at other extent zones or potentially new zones that sampling identifies.
Hmm. So again, I'm happy that you're explaining this much more in depth than what I could understand on my own. But what I'm wondering here is then the Harry property is first of all, it's a relatively small property based on what else is in the region, right? It's surrounded by giants in the area, both in terms of the land packages, but also in terms of market caps. Let's not call them giants, but there's larger market caps in the area too. But if you have something there that would be of potential interest to one of those multiple neighbors, maybe potentially, again, those are the forward-looking statements, but in the future, why wouldn't some of them have already bought it before you did that deal earlier this year?
So the company that had that project in it,
Hmm.
I would say they drilled it. They got some high grade silver equivalent hits, but they didn't have the high grade gold hits. A lot of people have definitely phoned us about the project being like, wow, those are amazing hits. How big do you think this thing can get? And we're like, look, we got to drill it. Just like anyone, we got to drill the rest of it. This project specifically, I think, like I've been alluding to, it's been covered by a glacier for a very long time. So a lot of people just kind of passed it and they're like, yeah, yeah, it's there. Sure. Maybe there's something there. And now that the glacier's rapidly receding, the outcrops alone are impressive. So, it came from a company called Teuton, and then it came into Optimum Ventures. And this project's been held for years and years and years. And Andy Bowering, who was the chairman of Optimum Ventures, who's on our board now, thought that, with Rob McLeod's knowledge, our ability to execute, Frank in the back on the finance and on the vision side, that this is a good home for it. Because you're right, we are surrounded by bigger neighbors. We're surrounded by the Ascots who are about to go into production, the Scotties who are probably going to come up with a fair sized resource, I'd imagine, fairly soon. So I look at it as a great place to be. Like, I couldn't almost get in a better place.
Yeah, well, I obviously see where you're coming from. And I'm reverting back to that. Why didn't they pick it up already? But you make a good point that it was in different hands, and maybe not the same deal was on the table at that time. Interesting. You should mention the silver grades. What part of the property did those come from?
The silver grades from the Swan Zone. So these are polymetallic sheeted veins, as Rob explains them, and they do end up having high silver grades, lead zinc grades. They have high grades of gold in different portions of it, as we've proven. So that's from the same zone, but 100 and I thought it was about 250 meters away, but when we mapped it, it was about 150. So the outer extent of where we're drilling is about 200 meters. So that's just one portion of one zone.
Hmm. Well, and so how come couldn't they find, I mean, what happened that they didn't find the gold?
So they drilled shallow holes. They again, I'd revert back to Rob's geological knowledge, having a different knowledge base than other people up there. He's able to look at things and go, okay, I think this zone does this and this, and he's led to many discoveries doing that, so I trust him.
Okay, fair point. But has Harry now moved has it climbed to the top of your focus ladder, if you will, or where would you place it?
What I like to say is when you find high grade gold like that, it becomes a focus pretty quick, right? Like the extent of that property and its location and the accessibility is great for us.
Hmm.
Now, when I look at Blackwolf as a whole, I look at, okay, we have this unbelievably high grade gold hit. It's great. We can extend that. We're sampling. We're going to show strike hopefully here. But also, we have Cantoo on the Alaska side, which we will talk about. And then Niblack, our base. We're one of the only companies that can work in the winter, right? Niblack gives us the ability from expansion of that resource potential, strike potential expansion, and the ability to work almost all year round. Well, I discount December because no one really wants to go into an island in December and work, but I will. So it puts us in a unique position to grow instead of being cyclical with the summer seasons. You know how this industry works. Copper and gold can spike in February and come back down in August when we're drilling, right? Or
Yeah.
in June when we're drilling. So Niblack is an interesting leverage play on the copper gold side as well. So it's not that it's, not that Cantoo or Harry are the top of the focus. They're different cycles of the focus.
Is it Harry's 4 month drilling, I assume?
Harry, you can drill from June till October.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
five months pretty reasonably. Sometimes at low snowpack seasons, you can get in there in May or even April.
Right. But the 5 to 8,000 meter potential drill program, so that's 6, 7 months in the future from now.
Probably starting in June. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
looking to start that.
Right. And so why I'm asking you this is because it seems to me like you do have your hands full as it is. I mean, for a bunch of projects, right? And I'm trying to understand what you plan on doing with each one of those properties moving forward. That's where I'm coming from, as well as obviously how you plan on financing exploration and all of them. So yeah, maybe talk to me about that. Are you like, would you be looking for strategic? Is it as in a major to option something with, or do you think you'll be able to raise the money on your own and you just want to keep the whole thing for yourself?
Look, we're not against strategic partners coming in, that's for sure.
Mm,
When you look at something like Niblack, it when it's expanded fits that model of like a Greens Creek, the Heclas, and those people of the world. Um, yeah, I think there's a way to do a deal to expand that with us maintaining a majority of an ownership and someone coming into it. We're exploring those options right now. Again, it has to be accretive for our shareholders. We don't want to give anything away. We do have cash in the bank. We do have the ability to raise money with people like Frank and Andy and Rob behind us. So to me, just because the market's bad doesn't mean we need to give things away, right?
mm, sure.
We are planning a phased approach. We're going to do a phased approach we're looking at a phased approach at Niblack, and we're looking at that same phased approach at Harry. Again, being fully funded for those puts us in the driver's seat, which is a much better position than having to raise money right now.
Is that an idea? Like you'd say you were not opposed to working with a major. Is it just an idea, or is it something that like are there any TAs in place basically that you can tell me about?
Well, if I tell you if there's CAs in place, that'd be a problem. Look, we are in conversations with multiple different people around, specifically Niblack and some about Harry and Cantoo. So those conversations are advancing. I don't want to talk too much about it, but we're happy with what we're seeing, and I think some people are starting to take notice of these assets, especially since Frank and people are involved, being like, well, hold on, why is Niblack, that could be a mine one day. With the hub and spoke model, that's a legit shot. Harry has the potential to open up a whole new gold discovery zone. So does Cantoo for copper, gold, whatever we find on that Alaska side. So we are positioned that people are taking notice of us.
Mm. You mentioned Frank here, Frank Giustra a couple of times. Is he actively involved in business development? I don't mean marketing, but that's part of it. But is he like actively involved in business development, getting potential partnerships, talking to people about this story?
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I talked to Frank a fair amount.
Okay.
Um, you know, I'm not gonna say I don't know Frank super well, and like we work in the same office, and I'm getting to know him, and he's such an amazing human as a person, but also just like the vision that he instills. Like I learned more from a 15-minute conversation with him than someone probably does in 5 years in the industry.
Hmm.
But the vision is huge. Like he's just always challenging us to think bigger and hey, how do I help? What can I do to help? Like he's very actively involved with the companies that are a part of this, and I'm glad we're one of them.
Hmm. Right. There are, of course, especially in the online world, multiple opinions on everybody out there. But if there's one thing true is that he's got big vision and he's also been able to deliver on a couple of companies, not only in the mining space, as people would know. So that's where I'm coming from with that question and asking like how involved is he? So good point. We can maybe talk about some of the other properties we have here too as well. Again, Cantoo, when did you finish drilling that? In September?
Yeah, it was September, right before we moved over to Harry.
What I mean, it's exceptionally long that the assay results are taking. What's going on?
Different lab than the Harry results. We kind of inherited this lab, so I imagine we're probably going to be doing different things next year.
Right.
But everything's starting to trickle in, so I can't talk much more about that.
Hmm. Is there
You
a
know,
cost difference between Cantu and Harry? For I mean,
oh
for
yeah,
drilling, assaying, and all that.
yeah, yeah, significantly different.
Okay,
Yeah,
what's
being on the well on the USA side, you're paying in USA dollars, US dollars. So the costs are similar, but in the US dollars
oh, okay.
size. So now you're talking $750 or 800 a meter versus 470 or 500 Canadian.
But they're not that far from each other.
They're not, but you still have to use U.S. contractors. You have to,
Huh.
U.S. Helicopter. It's even though they're a kilometer apart or a couple kilometers apart, it's very um, it changes quite a bit.
Hmm. But is that like permits dependent for the drill contract? Like can you not use your Canadian contract just over the border?
So the drilling contractors, yes, as long as they have the right certifications to be over there, and the drill rig has the right certifications to be in there.
Hmm.
Helicopter, no. One of the big differences between Harry and Cantoo is that there's a road going through Harry, so we can actually drop people off and they can just walk down to the drill pad. So you actually save on that. It's much lower elevation, so the time to get there is quicker. Yeah. So, and the drilling's different. They're very different geological settings. The
How
drilling
come?
at Harry went really well and it went really fast. With the
Hmm.
drilling at Cantoo, it's very greenfield, right? So there'd never been a drill hole in it. So we took it slow. We made sure we were finding what we wanted to, and they're very different situations. I do think that as you progress with a drilling contractor, they get used to your management style, they get used to the ground conditions, and they speed up. We saw that at Harry. We had one shift that was like 112 meters. That's an incredible drill shift.
Hmm.
It was wild. So again, as the drill contractor gets used to it, they get more efficient.
What are you getting over in Alaska per shift? In terms of meters, how many meters are you getting done?
I think we were like 30 to 70 depending on the day.
Hmm. So
Yeah,
significantly less. It's
different.
interesting. Yeah.
Again, different understanding, right?
That's
As
very
as
interesting. I wouldn't have
we
expected it. Like I just would have thought that it's practically the same.
No, I mean, drilling rock's completely different. I've drilled in other places of the world, in Idaho, and tell you, man, there were some shifts we got 5 meters, and just
Yeah.
because the quartz was so hard, right? You're just ripping through drill bits, so it really is dependent on a number of things, including weather, right? Being at lower elevation with Harry, less weather issues.
No, yeah, for sure. And excuse me, I was just thinking because they're just so close to each other. That's why. Um, but okay, but it's probably results dependent. But do you know what will come next for Cantu?
So, I mean, there's a whole whack area there. Like it's a fair size area with multiple different claims in it. Mineral Hills right beside it. You have Cantu. You have all the hydro properties in the back there. So there will be a larger program next year. What we're looking at is a larger program of sampling and mapping because you want to pull all these together. There's areas that have been covered by glaciers for years,
Hmm.
and now that are just opening up, and we're like, okay, well, hold on. We saw that outcrop from the helicopter. We didn't get to it this year. Let's go sample it next, right? So there's a more comprehensive, detailed, boots on the ground approach that will happen over the next little while. Well, next little while being next year,
Hmm.
because there's snowmobiling up there now. So I don't think we're going to see anything. Um, but the way the plan is evolving is a more comprehensive, detailed program out there.
Hmm. Is it the same June to through October drilling over there?
It's more starts in July.
Oh wow.
Just it's interesting. So in the way the U.S. Forest Service works versus the BC side, even though like unless you knew there was a border there, it looks all the same. There's different constraints on their permitting times versus in BC. So there's a July start for permitting in there, and we could start in June. We'd have to do some pre-work there, but we're fully permitted, so that's a huge advantage.
What kind of
Forest
land is it on? Is it BLM or
Forest Service,
Forest Service?
USFS. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. And that's it. Like that's the only party you have to deal with in terms of permitting.
yeah.
Right. Well,
U.S.
what
Forest
does
Service and the TWA, or like the Water Association, which we have our water permits as well.
mm, fully permitted, what does that mean? Just permitted for next program or how far up and what are
Yeah,
you allowed to do basically?
I think we permitted 8 different drill sites.
Okay.
So 8 different areas that we could drill. So that's what I mean by fully permitted. It's not a permitted mine, it's permitted for drilling.
Yeah,
But
of
eight,
course, but I was just wondering how I mean in terms of meter because I know that the Forest Service can limit your number of holes, your number of pads and the meters that you drill.
oh, I'd have to look at the meter permitting. it was mainly based on the number of pad locations, less so on the meters.
Right. Okay. Are you
Yeah.
thinking a bigger or smaller program for Cantoo than for Harry?
Don't know yet. Don't know
Okay.
yet. Too
Yeah.
preliminary to tell. I do know that because what we found at Harry and we've already told the market about it, that's we're planning that program already. That program is set up. Well, we don't have enough information on Cantu yet to decide what we want to do there yet for the next
Okay.
program. Yeah.
Do you have enough information to know if Harry and Cantoo will remain the focus, or are some of the other four claim blocks on Hyder going to come in as well?
I think a lot of the geological work that we need to do next year will determine what the Hyder group will be for us. I mean, it is a pure boots on the ground exercise. There's probably some geophysics we may be able to do, but right until we actually get boots on the ground and put a good month in there, then we can determine what we're going to do with the rest of those claim blocks. But again, they're right across from mines. They're just across the border, so there should be no reason why that type of mineralization doesn't happen on the Alaska side.
Yes, good point. And you're walking the bush on all four of those claim blocks, so you're not only doing Cantoo.
Correct. And we did a little bit of work on Mineral Hill this year, so we should have some results from that come out. But again, it's a steep area. There's some nice valleys in there, but even when I was flying over with the helicopter there, you could see different outcrops coming out of glaciers, and you're like, oh, by next year we should be able to access it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's the way you put it. There's also these pictures that you can see, historic pictures, and then how that actually recedes. It's kind
Oh
of
yeah.
interesting. I don't know if you had those. Those are always fun to look at.
Yeah,
Oh,
actually, I think I have one here. It's funny. I was going to show you. Rob sent me this.
yeah, you can send it to me. I can overlay it on top of the video. That'd be nice for people to see too.
For sure. Yeah, Rob sent me this picture, and it was a glacier. Oh, here we go. Show it to your viewers.
Yeah.
That's the Harry project. That
Okay.
was back in the day on the Harry project. You can see the Grand Duke Road there.
Hmm.
We're drilling down here. Like that's how fast that glacier has been receding.
Oh wow. It's just basically for people, maybe for people listening. It's just one whole white surface covered by ice, and that's it. Like you see nothing
Giant white
else.
ice surface. Yep.
So, and that's already seen. That's a cool feature. But again, okay, so that's October, excuse me, June to through October and July through October on Can 2. A good 6, 7, 8 months away. What are you doing in the meanwhile?
Exactly. That's a great question. We want to be different. We want to be different than the rest of everyone waiting to drill again. That's where Niblack can play a big part. I mean, having a high grade copper, gold, silver, zinc deposit, that's critical metals in the USA on the Alaska side, fully accessible. I mean, we're again in our current cash position, we have the ability to go out there and do some work there to show extents, to show potential geophysical anomalies, do some more drilling. So we are planning a program there. We don't have enough information as of yet to tell the market about it, but we will probably in early January.
Okay, so that's this is well, there's basically news flow up until then, and then January starts work. So you're not going to be lacking for news, basically.
No, no, and then we'll start talking about the MOU that we did with Niblack and New Molly and the other companies and how we're progressing with that. So there's a kind of first principles engineering side to it that we can start discussing and how that will drive our decisions at Niblack as well.
I want to talk about that as well. Just here in a second, because Niblack, that's a property that at the beginning I mentioned. There is a resource estimate on 2 of the 6 known mineralized VMS occurrences. You cannot be specific for 2024, as you told me, but is the plan to go to the other 4 or focus on the 2 that you already know?
You know what? I think the biggest comment I get from potential partners and some of my friends that work for majors and stuff like that is that look, that grade and that deposit you have is great, and if you can show that those other deposits have similar grades, or sorry, not deposits, the other areas have similar grades, this thing grows exponentially.
Mm.
You don't need to go through and start, infill drilling every inch. You can do 100-meter step outs and start showing, okay, it's here, it's here, it's here. But I do think there's some geophysics that we could run across the existing mine and then across the existing resource and then across the areas that we want to that would help us identify the targets really quick. So that might be an integral part of what we're going to be doing in the near future.
Mm. So it's not necessarily drilling off the bat?
It'll be a combination. I mean, we drilled the Niblack zone in 2020 and 2021, and the results were fantastic. So there's no reason why that shouldn't extend where Rob and the team decided to extend it to.
Mm. Right. Okay. Okay. Well, having talked about those properties, this does remind me of another news release from earlier on in the year where he signed an MOU with a company and it then became a collaboration between a few companies to, well, basically spend some money studying the potential for a hub and spoke model where, again, for people listening, it's basically one central mill being fed by a few potential other mines close to it in a sort of a, well, hub and spoke type of way. And we haven't heard much about that since. What's the latest on there? What's going on?
Yeah, so we finished phase one of the study. We'll be updating the market on that. I am going to be we're looking to go to phase two. So phase one was more the percentages, the economics around it, that stuff, non 43101 compliant type of information. And then phase two is more MET testing. So understanding each different, like we've already had our MET done. You know, Dolly Varden's done a lot of different MET work. I can't speak for Coast or Goliath. They're at different phases than what Niblack and Dolly are. But it is an interesting concept. This is a lot of companies run hub and spoke models, especially in the majors where they feed multiple deposits to one mill, you know, multiple open pits or multiple undergrounds.
Mm.
It's very common. So as far as I like it because it's a shared capex, or there's even an alternative where maybe New Molly builds the mill and we just toll mill through them. So there are significant advantages to this model. Barging is the cheapest mode of transportation. You have this all on tidewater. We don't have to put in our presentation. I'm 400 or 500 kilometers from a port. We are on a port.
Mm.
We are right there. You load the barge up and get going. So again, there's more work that needs to be done on it, but it's a unique idea that could put Niblack in play as a potential mine sooner than later.
Mm. I'm also glad you're mentioning Dolly Varden because there's also a couple of corporate similarities, if you will, between you and them guys. Is there potential for something more? Could this become more than what it is right now?
Look, I have a lot of time and respect for Sean and their team. He's a friend and someone I highly look up to in this industry. He's done such an amazing job with Dolly Varden. I'm just going to give him a props right there. And expanding that company. And there are a lot of similarities. Rob McLeod's on their board. He's our chairman as well. And there's a lot of shared geological team between Dolly and Blackwolf. We're all in the same office, right?
Yeah.
But I can't speak to if there's anything more to be done there. But we're all in the same neighborhood.
Mm.
And I do think that there is a vision in that neighborhood to have a centralized processing facility because it does not only benefit the communities, it benefits the First Nations like the Nisga'a, it benefits the companies huge. So there is a bigger vision, and I'm glad that Dolly's looking to be a part of that with the MOU. So,
How's the relationship, by the way, with the First Nations that you just mentioned?
that is something I'm very proud of. We have a significant relationship with the First Nations. Matt Moore is on our board. He's actually a Nisga'a member as well. So we have, between Rob's history and family history and background with the Nisga'a and other First Nations in the area, we have an exceptional relationship with them.
But you're basically allowed to do, well, not do as you please, but you're allowed to explore.
Yeah, look, we engage them with consultation when we want to do things on their traditional territory. Rob's very close with them, spends a lot of time up in that part of the world, and I will be looking to spend more time up there as well. So I would say it's not like do what you please or anything like that. It's a heavily consulted and managed relationship of mutual respect.
Right. Okay. Good point. You just to go back to sort of similarities with Dolly Varden and all that. You mentioned a couple of times that you share an office with a bunch of guys and so on and so forth. How's G&A right now for you?
Really, well, it's really low. It's probably about 95. a month, and that includes geologists, everything else.
Okay.
We do have carrying costs on Niblack, just dewatering and standard stuff there.
Mm.
Anything you'd expect with a mine, so it's not overly onerous. But the great thing about sharing an office and sharing resources is that you can partially bill, right? So I don't need to have someone full time. I can use 1 or 2 days of their time and get the full expertise from it instead of going to a big consulting group, right? So we're all a part of the Fiore group, or Fiore office, which is Frank's office. So we have different wings with engineers and geologists and capital markets people, but it really plays well when you have that collective, right? That kind of like a think tank in the tech world.
Mm.
But we have a ton of expertise here, and we look to utilize that through project assessments, through M&A assessments, through assessment of our current projects. It really helps having a diverse group.
Right. Do you know how that G&A is split, by the way, between office, marketing, and paychecks? I assume it's going to be paycheck heavy weighted, but then office and marketing, how's that split?
The office is actually not much of it. The office space isn't super expensive, especially as we only I showed you around my office. It's basically a small, looks like a bathroom. I keep it very small and contained. As long as I have my music in the background, I'm happy. I would say the salaries are a big component of that. Some of the marketing activities are a component to that.
Mm.
I'd say we're 50% salaries or 60, and that's whether it's our geologists or myself or our CFO. People cost money, right?
Sure.
I think one of the biggest plights in the mining industry, you always see it on chat boards and stuff. People talk about salaries and junior miners and stuff like that. You got to remember, if you want to get a professional, you're probably going to have to pay for it, right? I definitely know that from working in the past on other mining projects and stuff, this is a significant pay decrease. And I don't do this because it's like, oh, I'm looking for the big paycheck, the month-to-month paycheck. You do this because you want to make discoveries and build a real company. That's why we do this.
Mm. What are you doing for marketing? What are you spending on marketing, and what are you getting in return for it?
So we have spent money on marketing, but we haven't actually used it, if that makes sense. So I have marketing plans with groups. We have money sitting there. And we've announced this to the world, eye to eye. We've announced Keith Schaefer, Keith in that group from OGIB. We haven't actually used them yet. I don't like not wasting money, but spending money without the plan. So we have the plan coming together now. Then we can start getting our word out there.
Mm.
When I started, not many people knew Frank was even involved with us, or Rob even. So it's still a very contained story, which is a really unique opportunity to get out there and say, scream to the hills, hey, we have a high grade gold hit. Hey, Frank's behind us. Hey, this is an opportunity in a market where, when you're looking for this is not investment advice, but when I look for an opportunity to invest in, I look at who's the people behind it, what is their track record, and have they made discoveries? We kind of fit all of those, and we have cash in the bank. So again, market doing what it's doing creates a unique opportunity for people, I think.
You mentioned that you have cash in the bank. And I mentioned that the financial situation is probably a bit different than what you had at your last filings. What's in the bank right now?
We have over 6 million in the bank right now.
Mm. Well, 6 million, you
that's
said
after drilling.
That's after drilling, right? And then you said 5 to 8,000 meters of drilling at what did you tell me, like 450?
About 450. So you're talking 2.5 million for drilling.
2.5 to 3.5. I mean, if you go to the 8,000, that'd be more 3.5 million-ish, something like
I would
that.
say the 8,000 mark would be dependent on what we're seeing, right? I don't like just putting, we're gonna drill 100,000 meters, and it's like, wait, hold on, what? You drill, and as you're assaying and as you're progressing, this is exploration, right? You want to be efficient with the money.
Okay, but so 6 million. Let's say that you do 2.5, as you said. You need 2.5 million to drill. Let's say that you spend about 500 to 600K for that 6 months that leads up to that drilling for G&A, keep the lights on and stuff like that. That's give or take 3 million, which means that you have plenty of room to not raise capital until it's time to drill. Is that how you're approaching it, or are you sort of a take the money if it's there type of guy?
One of the advice I've got from very experienced people in the industry is always take the money. I think our approach is a bit different. It is more heavy on our team, right? Like, hey, do we need money right now? No. What are we going to do with this money right now? If we went and took a bunch of money, is there anything we can do with it other than go to Niblack right now? Well, no. Does it make sense to dilute our shareholders at this price? Also a no. Okay, so we're in a good position. We don't need the money. We're financed to do our drill program at Harry and potentially at Niblack. Now it's about timing. If the market keeps getting worse and worse and worse, then we'll prioritize which one we're going to drill, right? You can't, as a studious or as shareholder duty to the shareholders, I can't go and just deploy all the capital and hope there's more capital there. That just wouldn't be a good idea.
Hmm.
And that's, that I think I'd probably end up losing my job. But for us, I mean, we're in a good financial position. We are planning on deploying into drilling when the season comes around, and we're looking at drilling at Niblack. But again, the market will give us what they'll give us. We raise money at, I think, the right time. We raised it at 24 cents. The market's still been in a steady decline on almost every single company out there.
Right.
And I think the sentiment will change. The narrative will change for mining. It is a requirement. Base metals, strategic metals, those are required to run this world, to drive it forward. I have friends in the tech space, and they have, like, when I say mining, they're like, huh? Like digital mining, like crypto? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, the things we take out of the ground? They're like, yeah, but I'm like, do we need those? And I'm like, you guys are really smart people,
Mm.
and you have an iPhone that's made almost of all metals. Like,
Yeah, it's true. Is that something you would be waiting for before you buy a megaphone, basically with that marketing money? Are you waiting for a market turn before you can ramp up marketing, or is it something that you can do in the meanwhile?
I think I like talking to the market all the time. I think being at the forefront at all times is the right way to do it, just so you can, hey, we're here, we're still working. Here's
Mm.
our investors, here's our projects. How much you amplify that is the other question. When the market turns, everyone amplifies, right? So it becomes a barrage of who do we talk to and what do we listen to. But if you're more steady state, talking about it and getting it out there, and then maybe there's a change in a macro environment, maybe there's a change on a geopolitical side or on a political side that makes it more advantageous, then we'll look at doing that. We have some pretty smart people in the marketing side, you know, Frank, Andy Bowering, people like that have been doing this for a very long time. So I definitely heed their advice.
Mm. Okay, I think I'm making sense of all the properties that you have on here. Oh, that's something that I did want to ask is are you happy with the number of properties that you have right now? And would you be looking for more opportunities to expand, or is the focus now just drill, drill, drill?
Look, Rob and I always say this to people, M&A is a part of our strategy, and using the strength of Rob's background in the area and the strength that Frank and Andy bring to the table and the cumulative team around here, there are opportunities out there. I mean, our stock's depressed and down. There's other opportunities that are the same. So we always have our eye on the market. We always have our eye on it. What could be a significant like bolt on to Blackwolf that would complement the story. Not in the US or Africa, certain parts of the world, but we're like, how do we complement Rob's history and background in this area, Frank's background? So it is a part of the story, but it wouldn't be something we would do unless it was majorly accretive to us.
Well, Morgan, I appreciate you investing in time in me. I think I'm all out of questions. What am I forgetting? What did you come here hoping to talk about, but I'm failing to bring up?
Nothing. I mean, I think we hit every note that we could. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate you having us on.
And I appreciate you investing in time in me. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.